Rimfire rounds aren't exactly everyone's bet for tasks that require solid stopping power. They're always limited to small tasks, and for most part, that's been the case. But of course, this doesn't mean that there are no exceptions that might surprise you. What's up, everyone? This is your host, Ted from Line 45, and today, I am going to introduce distinct rimfire ammo that generates ballistic capabilities that you wouldn't expect from a rimfire load. Before anything else, let me do this quick plug. Hit the like and subscribe buttons, all the buttons that you can see below. Don't forget to leave a comment too. I know it feels like a hassle, but those things help my channel a lot. Now, let's get back to the good stuff. CCI Stinger 22, LR32, grain. Do you know how most folks think of 22 LRs as just backyard plinking ammo? Cheap, quiet, soft recoiling, great for teaching kids or knocking over cans. And yeah, that's true for a lot of it. But the first time I ran CCI Stingers, that all went out the window. This ain't your average rimfire load. The first few shots cracked loud, slapped steel harder, and hit way flatter than I expected. Now here's what makes it special. It has this 32-grain copper-plated hollow point bullet, which is lighter than your usual 36 or 40-grain plinking stuff. And that lighter weight is how they get it moving so damn fast. In particular, I'm talking about 1,640 feet per second, which is absolutely hauling for a rimfire. That puts it right up there at the top of the 22 LR food chain. Not even CCI Minimags or most hypervelocity loads touch that number consistently. With that kind of speed, you're getting about 191 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. That's still not centerfire power. True, it's not, but it's a hell of a lot for a rimfire. Most regular 22 rounds sit down in the 100 to 300 foot-pound range. But this thing is punching a full 50% harder, and you can feel the difference on steel, on varmints, on everything. Now, comparing it to 9mm, well, you're not going to match the energy. Not even close. A 9mm is pushing 115 grains at 1,100 to 1,200 feet per second and putting down 330 to 365 foot-pounds depending on the load. But get this, the Stinger's actually faster than most 9mm, and with a proper zero, it flies flatter out to 100 yards than a lot of folks expect. I wouldn't use it for self-defense, obviously, unless it's necessary, as it's still a rimfire. But for small games, pest control, or maybe even fox or raccoon if you're placing shots? Absolutely. And here's a little geeky detail most people miss. The Stinger's case is slightly longer than a regular 22 LR. That lets CCI cram in more powder without blowing the whole case apart. The overall cartridge length is still the same, so it chambers fine in most guns, but you might run into issues in some tight match chambers. Bolt guns eat it up. Semi-autos usually do too, though every now and then you'll find a picky pistol that doesn't like the hotter rimfire stuff. The bullet copper-plated, which helps cut down on fouling, and that hollow point cavity actually works. I've used it on varmints and you can tell the difference. It's cleaner, more effective hits than solids or round noses. It expands well, especially at close range where that velocity's still cooking hot. I've run it through Ruger 1022s, bolt guns, pistols, you name it, and it's been rock solid. CCI's primer consistency is top-notch, which is why I trust their ammo for serious rimfire use. No misfires, no weird velocity drops, no feeding issues unless your gun's already filthy. Aguila Super Maximum 22 LR 30 grain. You want to talk about a rimfire round that cooks above its weight class? Then you should get to know Aguila Super Maximum. I've run a lot of 22 LR over the years. Everything from bulk pack plinking junk to premium stuff, and only a few more like this load. It's basically Aguila taking the 22 LR and saying, let's see just how fast we can push this thing before it starts blowing primers. This round fires a 30-grain copper-plated bullet that absolutely screams out of the muzzle at 1,700 feet per second. And yes, that's factory spec, and it checks out in chrono tests. To put that in perspective, most standard 22 LR runs in the 1,050 to 1,100 feet per second range. Even your high-velocity stuff like Minimags might touch 1,260. Stingers? Maybe 1,600 on a good day. Super Maximum just says, hold my beer, and blows right past them. With that kind of speed and a 30-grain pill, you're looking at right around 193 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. That's a lot coming out of a rimfire. You're easily 50% hotter than most bulk .22 LRs, and honestly not that far off from the lighter end of centerfire pistol rounds. It's not uncommon for guys to ask, "Hey, does this actually get close to 9mm?" And here's the answer I always give. No, it doesn't match it, but it definitely encroaches on the lower end of the spectrum. A 115-grain 9mm is still going to put out over 330 foot-pounds, but it's wild to think a rimfire is even in the same conversation. What makes this load work is the balance between that lightweight projectile and the powder charge. Aguila didn't just stuff a case with more powder and hope for the best. They engineered it so that the pressure curve spikes early and gets that bullet moving fast, but not so much that the case ruptures or the brass deforms. And the copper plating on the bullet is not just for show. It actually helps keep fouling down and lets the projectile hold together at those speeds. You don't want a soft lead slug keyholing out of the barrel at 1,700 feet per second. I've run it through bolt guns and some semi-autos. Some rimfire pistols handle it fine, some don't like it. It's just the nature of running rimfire at the bleeding edge. Blowback actions can be picky when you're way outside the norm on velocity. But when it runs, man, it's fun. You get a flatter trajectory, tighter groups at a distance, and honestly more thump on target than most people expect from a .22 LR. I like it for small game hunting when I want that extra bit of reach, or when I'm dealing with something a little tougher like jackrabbits or raccoons. You're talking about a rimfire load that puts out almost 200 foot-pounds of energy. That's solid medicine for anything up to coyote-sized critters, assuming you place your shot right. Hornady V-Max 22 WMR 30 grain. The Hornady V-Max 22 WMR isn't just a hot .22 mag. It's one of the hardest-hitting rimfire cartridges you can get your hands on, and it's built with purpose. This isn't just another high-velocity round, as I can confirm that this is a precision load that combines real rifle-level speed with the kind of energy you usually expect from centerfire pistols. The round uses a 30-grain V-Max polymer-tipped bullet, and while it looks cool, its purpose is not to impress you with aesthetics. It's a functional part of the projectile that improves ballistic coefficient in flight and initiates rapid fragmentation when it hits. The V-Max bullet has a swagged lead core and a precision jacket, and that polymer tip presses back into the core on impact to trigger expansion. The result is an explosive terminal effect, exactly what you want if you're hunting varmints or small predators. What really sets this load apart, though, is the speed. Hornady's data shows this round hits 2,200 feet per second at the muzzle when fired from a 24-inch test barrel. That's incredibly fast for a rimfire cartridge, and way beyond what you'll ever get from .22 LR, even in its most hypervelocity forms. The speed gives it a very flat trajectory, meaning you can reach out to 100 to 125 yards without major holdover, which is a big deal for small game hunters working at a distance. But yes, it's incomplete if it only offers speed. It also offers energy. That 30-grain V-Max at 2,200 feet per second generates 322 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, according to Hornady's official specs. That's not just powerful for a rimfire, it actually puts it right in line with lighter 9mm handgun loads. For context, a typical 9mm 115-grain FMJ runs about 1,150 feet per second and produces around 330 to 365 foot-pound of energy. So the V-Max is just shy of that territory, but it's remarkably close. And unlike a slow-moving rimfire slug, the V-Max moves fast enough to cause serious fragmentation on impact. You don't get that from most pistol rounds. Compared to standard .22 LR loads, which top out around 130 to 190 foot-pounds of energy even in high-velocity variants, the V-Max 22 WMR nearly doubles the muzzle energy. And with that extra punch comes greater range, better terminal performance, and more reliability on targets like coyotes, foxes, raccoons, and other tough-skinned varmints that don't always go down easily. The round is also known for feeding well in most bolt-action and semi-auto .22 WMR platforms. Hornady builds these with clean-burning powder and reliable rimfire primers, so consistency shot-to-shot is excellent. It's not bulk ammo. It's designed for serious varmint hunting, And it shows. It's not picky about chambering, and in rifles with good barrels, it's capable of solid MOA-level accuracy, out past 100 yards. Of course, I have to remind you that you should not treat it as your primary defensive round, except in dire situations. But technically speaking, this is as close as you get to centerfire-level ballistics in a lightweight, low-recoil package. CCI Gamepoint 40 grain. If you're the kind of guy who hunts small games with a .22 Magnum and wants something that hits a little harder without blowing your target in half, you really ought to take a close look at CCI's Gamepoint. I've been running it through my bolt-action .22 Magnum for a while now, specifically for raccoons, foxes, and even the occasional coyote. And I'll tell you straight up, this round doesn't mess around. It has a 40-grain jacketed soft-point bullet with a dimpled tip, and it's built to mushroom on impact like a proper big-game round. This ain't one of those varmint loads that fragments into glitter when it hits fur. This thing holds together and drives in deep. That's what I like about it. If I'm taking a shot at something like a fox or a raccoon at 50 yards, I know the round's going to go in, expand just right, and put the animal down fast without tearing it up or blowing through the far side. Now let me talk numbers, because this ain't just some middling load that pretends to be tough. CCI clocks this thing at 1,875 feet per second, and for a 40-grain bullet, that's hauling. You're getting about 312 foot-pounds of muzzle energy out of it. That's not just good for rimfire. That's almost flirting with 9mm territory. A standard 9mm FMJ out of a pistol generates around 330 to 360 foot-pounds. So the Gamepoint's right there on the heels of a centerfire pistol, but in a rimfire package with way less recoil and way more reach. And that's the very thing that you should know about this round. It actually flies flat. I mean, it's not laser flat like a V-Max at 2,200 feet per second, but it still holds a nice, predictable trajectory out to 100 yards easily. You're not lobbing shots like with .22 LR. You put your crosshairs on something with this, and that bullet's going to land close to where you're aiming. No crazy drop or holdover if you've got a good zero. I've run this round in everything from lever guns to bolt guns, and it cycles clean and shoots tight in just about everything I've fed it into. It's CCI, after all. It gives clean powder, solid brass, consistent ignition, and no duds. I don't think I've ever had a misfire with Gamepoint, which says something for rimfire. And the accuracy? If your rifle can shoot, this ammo will group. My Savage 93 eats it up. And here's the real reason I keep it in my ammo can. It just performs better than a lot of the flashy explosive stuff when you actually need to drop games clean and quick. I've used V-Max, I've used TNT, and sure, they explode nicely on prairie dogs and jackrabbits, but if you're shooting for meat or you want full pass-through without over-fragmenting, Gamepoint is where it's at. It got just the right blend of weight, velocity, and bullet construction to get the job done. So if you're asking me what makes CCI Gamepoint one of the most powerful rimfire loads, it's the fact that it gives you over 300 foot-pounds of energy, centerfire-style performance, and a bullet that actually expands and punches through like it's supposed to. It's not flashy, but it's brutally effective. I'd take a box of this over any high-velocity gimmick ammo any day if I know I've got serious work to do. It's just that good. Winchester Varmint HV 30 grain. Let me tell you this. If you haven't messed with the Winchester Varmint HV in .22 Magnum, you're seriously sleeping on one of the hardest-hitting rimfire rounds out there. I'm not exaggerating when I say this thing gets dangerously close to 9mm territory in terms of energy. And for a rimfire, that's saying something. So here's the deal. This round uses a 30-grain V-Max bullet, and if you've shot anything with a V-Max tip, you know exactly what I mean when I say it blows things up. That little red polymer tip isn't just there to look cool. It improves the aerodynamics a bit, yeah, but its real job is to start the expansion when the bullet hits something soft. The second it impacts, the tip drives back into the lead core and causes the whole thing to fragment violently. You hit a groundhog or raccoon with this, and they're done. Lights out, and no tracking is required. The speed of this load is close to unreal, given that it's a rimfire. Winchester rates this round at around 2,250 feet per second, which is absolutely hauling for a rimfire. That's faster than CCI Stingers, faster than Hornady's V-Max load, and even a little quicker than Aguila's Super Maximum. This thing is right at the ragged edge of what you can push out of a 22 WMR case safely. And because of that speed, the bullet hits like a sledgehammer, especially out to 100 yards where most rimfire rounds start to fall apart. With that kind of velocity, you're looking at 337 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. For a 30-grain rimfire, that's certainly nuts. For comparison, your standard 115-grain 9mm FMJ is running about 330 to 365 foot-pounds. So yeah, the Varmint HV is sitting right there in that same energy window. Obviously, a 9mm is a heavier slug and carries more momentum. But if we're just talking sheer energy numbers, this little rimfire is punching way above its weight class. And man, it shoots flat. That kind of speed gives you a really forgiving trajectory. At over 50 yards, you're barely having to hold over, especially if your rifle is zeroed smart. It's perfect for varmint work where you might not have time to range everything out perfectly. Prairie dogs, squirrels, foxes. This round gets it done fast and clean. I've used it out of both bolt guns and semi-autos like the Savage A22, and it feeds smoothly, cycles fine, and groups tight. Plus, Winchester loads this stuff with clean-burning powder and solid rimfire primers, so it doesn't gum up the action, and I haven't had any misfires or feeding issues, even when running through 50-plus rounds in one session. It's just solid, consistent ammo that you don't have to baby.